My name's Susan Francis, and I will tell you the story about my life as an artist. I don't actually remember a time when I wasn't completely absorbed in art. I think even before I attended school, my favourite present was a block of blank paper that my aunt used to bring me. She worked in an office in Belfast, and she would bring me back blank paper, and it was the most exciting thing. These were the days before computers and printer paper was available, so you never had anything like that as a child. So it was so exciting to me. So really I continued to draw and make whatever I could with whatever materials I could get my hands on all of my childhood, really. And throughout all of my school life, I had other ideas, but I never really moved away from making things and drawing in particular. As I went through my teens, there was no other path really other than going into art education. Uninterrupted time is the most valuable thing as an artist. I mean, it's just like gold, and I find it's very hard to make work in fragmented time. So having a space at home was essential, really, to continue working as an artist. I think I kind of see my practice as quite restless, so the themes do change because I carry it kind of very close to myself. So the experiences that I have in life and the things that I come across constantly bleed through into my work. But there are some themes that have stayed with me, really, some broader themes from earlier years. The themes that I have, again, are very close to me, but I suppose I'm really interested in fragmented experience we go through to make sense of this world at the minute, particularly merging of digital and analogue life and how we slip in and out of that all the time. So that strange mashup of experience is really influences my work. So it tends to be quite personal, quite poetic, I suppose, at times. I have at times in the past used natural materials, but I suppose in the last decade in particular, it's been in particular less natural materials, although I'm coming back to that. But they tend to be very low-tech. They tend to be materials that I can make by hand and use by hand, that are close by. Often materials that are not particularly valued, that we stumble across every day. So it might be cotton wool, or it might be wire, or it might be household decorating paints, and glass and mirrors and transparency comes again and again in my work, and that has done actually for many years. But also within that is the digital. So there's a lot of filmmaking, there's a lot of the digital experience of social media, YouTube surfing, and all of the strange imagery that can, mix in with everyday life, which is just part and parcel of everyday living for us all now. So low-tech materials, but often a mix of digital in there as well. I'm quite hard to categorise, I suppose, as an artist, because I often change the mediums that I work with. Sometimes it might be drawing. I have done performance, but largely sculpture. Materials are absolutely central to everything that I do. So installation. So sculpture, installation and film, I would say, and that tends to shift back and forth between the conversation between those mediums. It depends really what project I'm working on, and an individual project might demand me to work in film, another project might demand me to work in more sculpture and making, an installation. So I'm never really fixed as an artist. So that, like a lot of artists, that COVID period was obviously devastating for so many people around the world, and it was a really difficult time because I didn't have my children at home with me actually. But also it was juxtaposed with lots of studio time, so lots of time alone, lots of time to create work, and like for a lot of artists, that created a bit of a shift in my practice. It was actually a really inspirational mix, because I was, being shut down to the home and the studio. Luckily I have a studio at home, unlike a lot of artists who weren't able to access their studio. I spent a lot of time there, and some of the things that I collected around me, like the books, I was able to spend lots of time with, and I began to return a bit more maybe to materials and objects in particular. I had a book on practical flower arranging from the sort of late 60s, which had very strange, futuristic, almost modernist sculptural pieces where objects were combined with plants in quite futuristic ways, and that inspired me to create a body of work. There's a strange power with very small objects and vulnerability, fragility in my work, I hope, There's a power when you put something very small in a space, you know, a really tiny, uncanny reference to a human body, even though it may be only, you know, a few inches big, can take up a whole space in a gallery and be just as powerful as something large. And that narrative of what is weak being strong, or what is fragile being powerful, I think in the small, these very vulnerable little dolls pieces, they can be quite strange and unsettle us quite powerfully, even though they're quite small. So they come up again and again in the work, you know. And actually in some of the digital work I've created, I've shrunk myself down in a really tiny way, sometimes to be inside my own sculptures. And I like that play with scale in my work. It's really difficult to pinpoint. It's impossible to pinpoint when you start to make art. For me anyway. I mean, I've never had a time when I wasn't making art, and I would, you know, think of the early pieces, of the early things that I did as a child as art. They were to me then, you know, and luckily I still have some of them. One of the earliest works that I did when I started primary school, I still have upstairs. I actually grew up and went to school with another artist who's quite a global name, Kathy Wilkes. We would walk to school together and back. And once I spoke to Kathy after, you know, when she was established in her career, and she said to me that sometimes she had wanted to leave art for a period, but actually it wouldn't leave her. And I understand that completely. For me, art is the language that I personally use to try and make sense of my experience in the world, and I think it's becoming increasingly complex for all of us at the moment in particular, and art gives me that space to explore what it means to exist here amongst these objects and materials, even though we don't quite understand it. I mean, the interesting thing about art is often when you are making work, it speaks back to you. In fact, it's only after you've made the work that you begin to understand more of why it has evolved in that way. So it's this constant language between yourself and the work that you make and what the work tells you back again. And hopefully that's the same with an audience too.